Families. Everyone has them. Not everyone likes them. But if you exist, you had one at one point. Today we're going to look at some crazy families here on Dead Rabbit Radio. First off, when a mother and her daughter are accused of witchcraft, which one of their souls will stalk the land looking for a fresh victim? And then we meet a mother and son hanging out at home one night when they see a terrifying vision appear in their living room. Little do they realize this is only the beginning of a tragic paranormal tale. Today on Dead Rabbit Radio. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Dead Rabbit Radio. I'm your host, Jason Garbiner. I'm having a great day. I hope you guys are having a great day too. I hope you guys are having tons of fun doing whatever you're doing. We only got 2 more days left of season 25, and then I'm going to take a 2-week break. We'll be back sometime. I guess I should tell you the date. I haven't really even looked at the calendar. I was like, oh, vacation's coming up. We'll be back on the air Monday, May 27th. I know that sounds like a long time, but unless you're listening to this episode on May 26th, you're like, yeah, he's back tomorrow. But yeah, we'll be back in 2 weeks. I need my rest. I love doing this show, but 50 episodes is my limit, I've learned. But someone who has no limit, someone who does whatever he wants, anytime he wants, running into Dead Rabbit Radio Command. Everyone get on your feet and give it up for our newest Patreon supporter, Jim Farmer. Woohoo, yeah, wee! Haha, yeah, he's all dancing on in, running on into Dead Rabbit Radio Command with a pitchfork. Jim, you're going to be our captain, our pilot this episode. If you guys can't support the show financially through the Patreon or YouTube memberships or whatever, totally fine. Really, really is. Just help spread the word about Dead Rabbit Radio. That helps out so much. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell everyone you know. Dead Rabbit Radio is your favorite paranormal show. Also, I will know soon, I'll probably learn during my break, what radio stations Dead Rabbit Radio is going to start airing on. Isn't that awesome? I mean, think about, you guys are like used to this stuff. You're listening to episodes, you're like, man, this guy's nuts. You never know what you're going to get on an episode of Dead Rabbit Radio, but you choose to listen. You're hitting play button, you're downloading an episode, whatever. In the very near future, people are going to be driving their truck across Nevada, and they're going to be tuning through the dial. They hear me talk about just insane stuff. They're like, what's going on? This is the craziest show ever. We're going to be airing on 2 radio stations at first, and then we're hoping to syndicate it out to other radio stations in the United States. Wouldn't that be fantastic? Jim, I'm going to go ahead and toss you the keys to we should have a farmer Dead Rabbit Radio vehicle. Like a Rabbit Reaper or a, I don't know, whatever, dude. Here's the keys to the Jason Jalopy. We're leaving behind Dead Rabbit Radio Command. Jim, drive us all the way out to Kentucky. Jim is driving us out to Kentucky. Specifically, we're headed to Marion, Kentucky. Jim, hit that time travel button. We're headed back to the year 1910. Now we're back in old-timey land. People are walking around with their black and white clothing. It's sepia-toned. We're just kind of standing there. Good thing Jim has his pitchfork, too, because we're going to need it. Right when we appear in Marion, Kentucky, we realize we're part of a mob. And if you ever find yourself in the middle of a mob, you better be pro-mob or immediately leaving the area. Do not try to reason with the mob. But anyways, we're part of this mob, and they're like, hey, hey, ho, ho, witches got to go. Hey, hey, ho, ho, witches got to go. And I'm all leading the chanting. I'm like, boo, boo, witches. I'm the loudest of them all. It doesn't matter who's accused of it. Boo, witches. We're part of this mob. They're walking down the street of Marion, Kentucky, and they're like, find the witch, dig the ditch, find the witch, dig the ditch. And I'm like, yes, 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 my brethren, yes, all of those who hate Wiccan, join me, we'll find them all. But we get to this house, and even I have a heart of gold sometimes, right? we're going to this witch's house, and we kick down the door. The first one, I'm like, let me do the first burning, guys, come on. I kick in the door, and it's not just a witch, but her 5-year-old daughter. And that's when some lunatic from behind me goes, they're both witches, both of them. And I go, whoa. I just thought we were going to kill an adult woman for witchcraft. This is too much for me, guys. A 5-year-old? How can a 5-year-old be a witch? I'm out of here. And I just like walk through the mob, and I take you guys with me. And I was like, I'm putting out my torch. I'd already lit it. And I was like, oh man, I don't want to kill adult witches either. Just so we're clear, I'm sure that might be a hate crime. It might be against their religion. It's just joking, but I'm definitely not gonna be part of a mob that kills a 5-year-old girl. We're all walking down the street, and you're like, Jason, why didn't we stop that mob? You turn around, you see the mob carrying the mother and the daughter out of the house. I was like, well, I don't know, but they had a lot of pitchforks, and we only had one. We're not gonna be a part of that. But that's what happens in 1910. Hold your questions till the end, because there's some dispute about this story. It's a very interesting story. Marion, Kentucky. They grab the mom. They grab the 5-year-old girl. We have the name of the 5-year-old, Mary Evelyn Ford. And both of them are burned at the stake for witchcraft. And really, 1910, I mean, these guys are way behind the times. Like, people are doing this stuff in the 1700s. So they do it nowadays in certain countries, but in America, in 1910, they didn't get the newsletter. We weren't burning witches anymore. So they drag him, they burn him, and we probably could have stopped. We probably could have done a little bit more to stop him, but, I was like, I got a show to do, guys, let's go. They kill the mother and the daughter. Now, the mother was buried in a graveyard, apparently lost to time. People don't know where she was buried, but Mary Evelyn Ford was buried in Pilot's Knob Cemetery. Now, this is a really interesting ghost story, because this is one of those stories where you will see the ghost story, like you'll see on Shadowlands.net, which is basically, this girl's grave is cursed. This little girl who actually was a witch, according to ghost stories, she wasn't like falsely accused. She was throwing eyes of newt into that cauldron just as much as her mom was. The story is the girl was not innocent. She actually was a practitioner of the dark arts, and the town was like, we can't have these people living here. So they burned him at the stake. And what they did was, because she actually was a witch, because it wasn't a mistaken identity, they put her in a steel-lined grave, and they covered the grave in rocks, not in dirt, to make it harder for her to physically get back out of there. As a witch, she comes back to life. She's not going to be able to lift all those rocks, apparently. I guess you can bring yourself back to life after you've been horribly burned, but you can't lift a couple pounds of rocks. Also, her grave site has been lined in these... They look metal. The word I kept finding was fence, but it looked metal in the photos that I've seen, because this is a real gravesite in Pilot's Knob Cemetery, right off of Old Ford's Ferry Road in Kentucky, Marion, Kentucky. They're in the shape of crosses. And it's the fence that's in the shape of crosses to, again, keep this witch from crawling out. But even if she is able to push her way through the steel-lined coffin and dig her way out of the rocks, now she's surrounded by these crosses. The fence is also too high for a 5-year-old to climb over. Again, I'm assuming she could just fly away at that point if she's that powerful. She's like, whee! But the story is that this was all set up so Mary Evelyn Ford could not escape. Now, this story takes place back in the year 1910, or at least that's when it started. That's when she was killed. When you look at the gravesite nowadays, because there's photos of this place, it looks really kept up. It looks like someone's actually monitoring the grave. It's an old cemetery, but either someone's keeping it up, someone's, getting all the weeds out of it, or the actual site is cursed. Like, no grass will grow there because the witch's blood soaks the soil. Also, it's made of rocks. I don't think a lot of grass is going to grow out of the rocks, what's interesting, a whole bunch of stuff. Let's get into the ghost thing. This metal fence, sometimes you'll see the bars bent out, as if some great force was grabbing onto them and pulling them down, hoping to figure out a way out, to make the fence a little bit shorter so this 5-year-old ghost girl, because that's what she is now, a witch, a ghost of a witch girl stuck in here. They say that if you go there at night, middle of the night, no one else is around, you'll see this little girl kind of pacing back and forth on the gravesite. She's wearing a white dress that has burn marks at the bottom. It's kind of cool looking, right? Kind of a fashion statement. And then she has blonde hair, which is also singed at the end of her hair as well. That would actually look pretty dope, right? If you didn't have to get horribly burned and killed to get that look, I could see that being like a new thing. Women walking around with burnt dresses. Well, anyways, she's not here to be a fashionista. She's trying to figure out a way to get out, to have her revenge against the descendants of the people who killed her and her mom. They say that you can see her walking back and forth. This is a super active spirit. It's not just a phantom. It's more of it's the ghost of a witch. It's about as powerful as you think it would be. It will make fun of you. If you go there in the middle of the night, apparently, Mary, you'll see her walking back and forth in her gravesite, and she'll be like, you guys got nothing better to do on a Saturday night, you losers. Apparently she's Beetlejuice as well. I'm burning up. She'll make fun of you. I can tell you don't have a date. That girl doesn't like you. That girl who's standing right next to you. I can read minds. She doesn't like you. It's like, that would be so mean, right? You're actually like, hey, honey, you meet this cute girl. You're like trying to figure out a way. You want to go ghost hunting with us? Yeah, sure. And then she's all like totally negging you. This ghost girl is like, what? Look at, he has lifts in his shoes. He's not really that tall. You're like, well, no, I don't. You're like having to take your shoes off to prove you don't have lifts. And then the ghost is chasing after you. You're like, I can't run that fast. My feet hurt. She mocks you. And if you get close enough to her, she reaches out and she tries to grab you. They say, this is the part of the story that I 100% don't believe. This part I'm about to tell you. It just seems it's logistically, no, I wouldn't say impossible, but not comfortable at least. They say, and also, not only does she mock you, and if you get too close to the grave, she grabs you, but if you climb over the fence, this metal fence that's tall enough for a 5-year-old girl not to be able to crawl out of, so it's pretty tall, and lay on her grave, on a big pile of rocks, she will try to pull you in. She'll try to pull you in. You'll feel little ghost hands try to pull you down through the rocks. And if someone is there with you, they can help pull you out, but if you go there alone, she'll pull your whole body into the grave, where she becomes even more powerful. I'm like, that's just dumb. Like, I don't believe that. I'll believe in this, everything else. Witch girl making fun of people, flying around. But one, it's the grave of a 5-year-old girl. It's not like a 6-foot plot of land. Like, even if you did get over that fence, you'd have to be in the fetal position, and you're lying on a bunch of rocks. Like, I would just be like, oh no, she's grabbing me. I'm getting up just because I don't want to lay on rocks anymore. I'd jump up, crawl back out of the gate. It's like, man, that was crazy. I don't ever do that again. My back's all bleeding. Oh no, she's drinking my blood. Let's go home. To put another twist on it, we're not even close to the end. This story gets so weird. This story gets even weirder. There's another spirit at the graveyard that people have cited. They call him the Watcher. And this is a tall, dark figure that also is seen stalking this same cemetery. This Pilot's Knob cemetery. The story goes that he was killed at a place called the Swinging Bridge. I tried looking that up. I don't actually think that's the name of a bridge. That's like one of those. It's like a bridge Indiana Jones would run across. Apparently they have a couple of those in Kentucky. This guy was hung by one, but apparently his spirit, I don't know if he was buried in the cemetery or if his spirit found his way here, but his spirit also haunts the cemetery. And he is trying to get to the little girl. So remember how I said sometimes when you go to the grave, you'll see that the iron bars are bent in as she's trying to get out. Sometimes the iron bars are bent in the opposite direction because the watcher is trying to get in. All of these crosses are preventing either person from getting out or in. The story goes is the watcher wants to get the girl, wants to get Mary's ghost, but because of all the crosses, this fence of crosses surrounding the grave, he can't get over it either. He's too evil. The crosses are preventing that. Which you have to, it's disturbing. You have to wonder, the other day we were talking about, can ghosts have sex with each other? Because we were saying on a previous episode, can ghosts talk to each other? If they died in different incidents 20 years apart, but they're haunting the same location, that does happen. Especially a location that has a lot of history, like a school, a college, things like that, apartment complex. Ghosts can talk to each other, we believe. Can ghosts have sex with each other? What happens when there's a pedophile ghost? Like, I imagine when you die and you go into the afterlife, you're not stuck on Earth. Everything that is broken about you like that is removed. I don't think you go up there with debilitating diseases. I don't think you go up there with horrific fetishes. I don't think you go up there with twisted mindsets like being a pedophile. I think all that stuff is removed from you. But if you were a ghost, if you didn't go into the afterlife, if you're actually still on Earth, I imagine a lot of that stuff may still stick around. It's creepy to think of, right? The only thing worse than an actual pedophile would be a pedophile who's invisible and can walk through walls. So this guy might be some sort of horrific child sex predator / ghost, and he's buried in the same graveyard as this powerful witch ghost. And he just sees this girl. He's like, I'm coming for you. And she's like, I mean, here's the thing. A fight between the two. I think she can take him. I think she could destroy this guy, but they can't get at each other anyways because of this fence. Because of this blessed fence. Now, I looked a lot into this. I originally found this on Shadowlands.net, which I love that resource. And then I try to verify what I possibly can from it. There's a group called the Louisville Ghost Hunters Society Investigation. And they went out, they did an investigation at this graveyard, and they went out and they took photos of this, and they showed that, it was what they described, what the Shadowlands described. Gravel grave, metal gate with like bent things at the top. They said before we got there, we had stopped at a local gas station, and when the workers at the gas station were wondering, because obviously we weren't from around there, they're like, so what are you guys doing here? They're like, oh, we're going to Pilot Knobb's cemetery. We're going to look into the story of Mary Evelyn Ford. And the people at the gas station was like, don't do it, bro. Don't go. It's super spooky. Well, they leave. They go anyways. When they get there, there's an older couple there at the cemetery. And the Louisville Ghost Hunter Society investigation says, hey, yeah, we're here to find that witch ghost. We want to take pictures. We want to take pictures of this powerful spirit who's been trying to escape her grave for 100 years. And this old couple, the guy who was posting this said that the woman went to say something and her husband grabbed her and says, no, you can't. They wouldn't understand. And then they left. The old couple left. So the Louisville Ghost Hunter Society, they went there during the day, they went back at night. They said, we did feel like there was something there. They didn't catch anything on camera. They said a lot of it probably is a local legend, but it is interesting because there's no security up there. There's no wayward teens. There's no locals using it as a drinking spot, which what a lot of these haunted places turn into. He said, we went up there, like, Stull, Kansas, which is a very famous haunted place. They'll call the cops on you in a heartbeat. We did an episode on them a long time ago. A lot of these places that are famously haunted, especially locally, they'll have police patrol the area or private security or something like that. But he goes, there's just nobody is out here. Not even the kids looking for a safe place to smoke dope. He said I don't remember the guy's name, but the ghost hunter who posted this, I'll put it in the show notes. He says that when they went back at night, they did sense this dark presence. When they actually went into the cemetery again at night, they went to her grave, they sensed this dark presence nearby. And it was a little too much, so they started to leave, and as they were headed back to their car, they could hear loud thumping footsteps chasing them back to the car. So that was kind of the end of their investigation. That was the end of their investigation and their beginning as career dry cleaners, cleaning the urine-stained pants of ghost hunters. So we have a couple local legends. We have an on-the-site ghost investigation, but we got some other pieces of information that I think might turn this story on its head for you. So there's a local newspaper called the Times Leader, and there's an article written by a woman named Peggy Gilkey. And she looked into this. She goes, I wanted to know how much of this was real. You figure there would be some court documents somewhere that a mob kidnapped a mother and a daughter and burned them alive. Either you would find maybe proof of a cover-up or proof of it happening, a news article. What she found out was some proof, but not in the way that we would think. Mary Evelyn Ford really did live, really was a real person back in the early 1900s. She died in 1916. Cause of death? Inflammation, not flames. Inflammation of the abdominal lining, or what we call peritonitis. Mary Evelyn Ford died in 1916. She was not set on fire. Her mother lived until 1955. So she was not burned at the stake along with her daughter. She didn't even die the same time of her daughter. The grave that has the rocks on it is Mary Evelyn Ford's grave. Why it has the rocks, why it has the crosses. The still lined casket, we don't know because we can't go there. But just looking at it, it does have the rock, it does have the crosses. Why that if she just had inflammation of the abdominal lining? And her mother, but who knows? Her mother died nearly 40 years, almost 40 years exactly after Mary did. She actually is buried in that same cemetery. So it's interesting to think in a way that we understand how these local legends start. You see something weird, let's say in a cemetery. A particular grave has rocks on it instead of grass like all the other graves, and it's surrounded by a fence that appears to be crosses interlocking. I think that is a judgment call. That wouldn't be the first thing I thought when I saw photos of this grave. I kept reading that it looked like that, so when I saw the photos, I was like, it kind of looks like that, I guess. But what happens is people take a real event and they go, I'm looking at this grave, it stands out, and then they may make up the ghost story based on stuff that they see. Go, why would you bury someone surrounded by crosses? Why would you cover the grave in rocks? Oh, maybe it's a vampire, maybe it's a witch. Because you know that the grave is old. If you just looked at the gravestone, you wouldn't know that she died of inflammation of the stomach. Her mother being buried in the cemetery, I wonder if the ghost of Mary isn't real. Obviously, she wasn't a witch. She wasn't burned at the stake. It would be interesting to take a look and see if the Watcher is not trying to break the gate to get in, or Mary's not trying to break the fence to get out, or however. The Dark Watcher is actually Mary's mother. That is a spirit that, it's dark because it's constantly having to chase people off. But that's the spirit of the mother trying to protect her daughter's grave. It's interesting because we have all these reports of these ghosts, and then we have one person who's writing for the newspaper saying this story's not real, and you may go, well, maybe she's still a ghost. Even if she just had a burning stomach, maybe she didn't burn to death. I did think this was interesting because this kind of puts a different spin on a lot of the ghost stories we tell, is that when Peggy Gilkey, when she was investigating the story, apparently this family's still in the area. Mary Evelyn Ford has family in the area. And for 100 years, people have been saying that she's a 5-year-old who was burned at the stake and now her ghost is trying to break out of the cemetery to get revenge. They were relieved that someone was actually clearing the record, saying, no, our great-great-great-grandniece or whatever was not a witch. She's not a ghost. She is nothing evil about her. She's just a little girl who died of a broken stomach. And Peggy ended her article with this, quote, shame on the one that started this story about a little witch girl. tell your Halloween stories and have fun, but not at the expense of others, unquote. Real interesting thing, because that's what we do a lot of the times, right? We find these weird ghost stories and we talk about them, and they might be real things. We can sit around and talk about the ghost story of Mary Evelyn Ford all day long. We don't know her. If it was a ghost story about your mom, I've thought about this in the course of the show. If my mom died tragically and people started talking about her ghost haunting a particular place, that honestly wouldn't bug me. That honestly wouldn't bug me, because that's just part of the game. First off, part of me would want to go investigate it. Mom, are you there? But you know what I mean? Like, if something happened to her and people started telling a ghost story about my mom, how would I feel about that? People love this stuff as long as it doesn't reflect on them in any way. But what you don't realize is that book you love so much, someone in that author's hometown is emailing that author saying, you got to take that book back. That scene where you broke up with that girl, I know that's about my current wife. I know that character's based on my current wife, you jerk. Take the book down, write an apology. The book that you love, the movie that you're watching that you enjoy, is based off somebody else's pain. To be fair, though, I also, because, I cover true crime. We'll wrap this story up like this. I think about that when I'm covering particular stories. I was like, how would I like it if someone... Let's say that a family member of mine was hanging out at home. It's 3 a.m. They're up late watching television, and some dude broke in the house and beat them to death with a billy club. Mashed their brains out all over the floor, and then stole like $50 worth of jewelry. I would be upset, obviously, that happened. I was like, oh, that jewelry, that was supposed to be mine. That was in the will. Obviously, I'd be upset by that. If a true crime YouTuber or a true crime podcast covered that, even if they did it in like a super disrespectful way, they're like, can you believe a guy got unalived when a man came in and... What's Minecraft YouTuber idiotic speak for getting your brains bashed in? He got... ouch! In his noggin. Till the red stuff came out. That's about as disrespectful as you could get. I hate that. Don't cover the stuff if you can't say the words. But if something happened to someone that I cared about and a true crime YouTuber covered it, I really don't have any place to talk. Like, I can't then be, what? No, you don't cover that. I did a story about a mother throwing her kids out of a car, but you can't talk about my family members. I understand when I'm doing true crime that this is a real story. I know sometimes I'll laugh. About it. Not the one about throwing the kids out of the car, but sometimes I'll laugh. Sometimes I'll make fun. And in the back of my head, I do think, well, how would you like it if someone did this to your family? But, I mean... I might not particularly like it, especially if they're like, he got unalived and then he unalived himself. That would piss me off more than anything, but I wouldn't really have a leg to stand on. I can't say that I wouldn't be upset, but I definitely couldn't say you can cover all true crime except the true crime that happens to my family. And this thing, too, shame on you for the one who started the story about the little witch girl, whatever. Ma'am... You've enjoyed enough stories over the years that was built on real people's pain. That poor woman had that house dropped on her in Kansas, and you still went and saw that movie. That you can't judge someone else for telling a fun ghost story about a little girl being burned to the stake and then haunting the area to this day. Get over it. That's what I'd have to say. Get over it. You can't really... Then you can enjoy no media. Like, have you ever watched Saving Private Ryan? You can't be like, shame on you, Spielberg, for making millions of dollars built on the intestines of young Americans. No, you go and watch Saving Private Ryan, you're like, yeah, it was based loosely on a true story. Omaha Beach took about a day or two. It wasn't 15 minutes up the beach, but, you just deal with it, is what I'm saying. You just got to deal with it. And I'd have to deal with it if that happened to me or one of my loved ones. If that happens, just don't say they were raped and unalived, please. I mean, that'll piss me off more than anything. Use adult language to talk about adult topics, or go and do toy reviews. Leave that stuff to the people with the cojones to actually say it. Jim Farmer, let's go ahead and toss you the keys to the world-famous Carpenter Copter. We are leaving behind Kentucky. Fly us all the way out to a nice neighborhood. I'm going to do a real quick Dead Rabbit Radio recommends, because that last story is kind of related to it, but I don't have a lot of time. There was a movie I saw recently called The Poel. I think it's Danish. It's Netherlands. It's something like that. It is a horror movie about a family that goes camping and hilarity ensues. And by hilarity, I mean there is I don't think this is necessarily a spoiler. It might kind of be a spoiler, but they go into the woods and they come across the ghost of a witch. It is not only a great example of a good actor playing a character you hate. Like, the dad. There's a lot of characters you don't like in this movie. But the dad is, you don't like him. We've all met people like him. Some of us may be him. But he's a know everything / know nothing kind of guy. Like, he wants to know everything, but you can tell there's some gaps. And he's taken his family and his neighbor or a coworker and coworker's daughter. They're all going camping out in the woods. And I mean, the first 5 minutes they get to the sign, it's in Danish or whatever, but you can tell it's a warning sign. It's red and white and huge letters on it. And I can assume the sign says, "Don't cross this line," as he's like clipping barbed wire. The dad's like, "No, I know the perfect spot to go camping." Click, click, click. And he leads his group out into the middle of nowhere, and they come across this beautiful, serene pool of water. It's fantastic. It is a really good horror movie. It's the perfect length. I think it's like an hour and 16 minutes. It's a nice, tight movie. And I do have to say, I'm not going to spoil this, but I will say this has a kill in it that might be one of the most ingenious ways I have ever seen how to kill somebody. It's a bit situational, but you'll know it when you see it. It took me a second. I was like, what in the world's going on? Because I'd never seen it done before. And it really makes you think, wow, you could actually get away with that. You 100% could get away with killing somebody like this. So if you're looking to, you're like, have your little notebook, you're like, Jason, don't fail me now. I need to kill a bunch of people this weekend. The Poel. Dead Rabbit Radio recommends The Poel. It's really good. Beautiful movie as well. Jim's flying us all the way out to this nice neighborhood. First off, I got to give a tip of the hat to the last 747. Sent this story over to me. Really, really appreciate it. We're about to meet a young boy. We'll call him Joey. We don't have his exact name. We'll call him Joey. 10 years old. And he's living in a townhome with his family. So it's mom, dad, and Joey. And on this particular night, dad was at work. So Joey's hanging out at home. And Joey said, you know what? Oh man, what a long day of learning at school. And today we learned about a little girl who got burned to death. And her ghost still haunts to this day. No lamestream media propaganda is going to prove otherwise. Joey is sitting there at the kitchen table. He's in the kitchen with his mom. And he describes what his mom is doing as pouring some milk. Joey said, I'm sitting in the living room and my mom is in the kitchen pouring milk. Which is weird, because it's like one of the quickest things you can do in a kitchen. Like, I don't think I could ever specify a time. I mean, unless the story involved milk spilling, I don't know if I could specify. I'd just be like, my mom was in the kitchen. I don't know why I'm nitpicking the story. It's actually quite sad, but Jim's like, oh great, I got a dead kid. And this story, what treats does Jason have for me this one? But anyways, Joey's sitting in the kitchen, and he goes, I'm just kind of sitting there, daydreaming about not going to school tomorrow, but I have to. And he's kind of just looking out into the living room in front of him, and he's just kind of looking around, daydreaming, when all of a sudden he sees that his dad is home. Dad is Dad is standing right in front of the closet, the living room closet. Dad is just standing there. Joey is looking right at his dad, and any sort of elation that he had that his father was home is quickly diminishing because he's starting to realize there's something really, really wrong with Dad. It's not just that he's standing completely motionless. If you want to scare somebody, just do that. Just walk into a room and just freeze. It's very unnerving. He said, Joey goes, I kept looking at my dad and I realized there was something wrong with his eyes. His eyes were wide open, but the eyeballs themselves were too small. They didn't look like my dad's eyes. They probably didn't look like anybody's eyes, any human's eyes. Has these small eyeballs, even though his eyelids were wide open. Joey knows a couple things. One, his dad shouldn't be home yet. Two, his dad has normal-sized human eyeballs. Three, also, he picked up on this later in life. He goes, we lived in a really squeaky townhome. The floorboards would always squeak. He goes, no one could enter the room quietly. No one could have come through the front door and walked into that part of the living room and nobody hear that. So this father figure, literally in this case, a figure of a father, but anyways, he appears right in front of this closet with these tiny eyes. And Joey thinks I must be dreaming. He starts rubbing his eyes. I must be seeing things. But when he's done rubbing his eyes, he looks and his dad is still standing there, motionless. And he stands there for about another 60 seconds. Joey blinks his eyes, and the father is gone. He made no noise as he left. He was as silent as he was when he first showed up, which Joey says was impossible in that house. At this point, Joey's completely terrified. He doesn't know really where to put that. Especially, you could think it was a ghost, but Dad's still alive. But it's not my dad because my dad moves and he has normal-sized eyeballs. You don't know what it is. You can't really even process it. He starts to get terrified, and Joey looks over to his mom, who is in the kitchen, who has this same view that Joey does. But she's just standing there, not acknowledging anything weird just happened. She didn't say anything, and Joey just kind of sits there and goes, I must have just hallucinated that. I know that's not real. That wasn't my dad. I don't know how to put it in any sort of context. I don't know if I have a mental illness. I don't know if I'm too stressed. I don't know if I'm too tired, but Mom didn't see it. Must have just been me. So he never tells his mother what he saw. He just figures it was some weird thing. But not a ghost, not a demon, nothing. Just some sort of glitch. Right? Maybe he needs to go to bed a little bit earlier. He doesn't say anything to his mom. Years later, Joey is talking to his dad, and for whatever reason, this subject comes up. Joey's talking to his dad, and he goes, Dad, when I was a kid, when we lived in that old townhome, weirdest experience. One night I was sitting there, you were at work, I was home with Mom, we were in the kitchen, and I looked over and I saw you standing in front of the closet, and you didn't move. It was the creepiest thing. Your eyeballs are super small. It was so terrifying. You were there for a while. Not like the length of a sitcom, but, more time than I would be comfortable spending with a hallucination of you, Dad. I don't know what it was, but it really creeped me out. And Joey's dad just kind of sits there and he's like, son, I've heard that story before. Joey's like, what? This is the first time he's talking to his dad about it. Joey's dad goes, your mom told me about that. Your mom told me that exact same story. One night it was just you and her. She looked over and she saw me standing in front of the closet. And then I disappeared. Joey didn't know that his mom had seen it, but Joey knew that his mother had some serious mental health issues. And so did Dad. And Joey's dad says, when your mom told me what she had seen, because she was suffering from all of these adverse mental health things, I figured it was a hallucination. I completely just kind of blew it off. I didn't think it was anything because the person who was telling me this stuff was mentally disturbed, was mentally ill. And Joey had not said anything to his mother about it. Joey thought only he saw it. The mom thought only she saw it. And since nobody talked to each other, they didn't realize they had both seen the same thing. And when the mom told the dad about it all those years ago, he just said, well, honey, you were probably hallucinating. A few months after Joey and his mother saw the father standing in front of the door just appear and disappear, a few months after that, Joey's mother killed herself. An absolutely tragic story that I think there's a whole lot of ways we can unpack this. First off, I will say I got this. Well, the last 747 sent it over to me. They got it from Phantoms and Monsters, that fantastic website by Lon Strickler. Really interesting, really tragic story when we look at it. Because if two people are witnessing the same thing, it's not just a hallucination. If two people are witnessing the same thing, it's something. Some sort of phenomenon is taking place in that household. It's tragic to think, I'm not putting any of the blame on Joey or the dad. I'm not putting really any of the blame on the mother as well. I mean, mental health issues are a dastardly demon to have on your back. And I'm not blaming the mom for the suicide or Joey for the suicide or dad for his suicide or anything like that. I want to be clear that I say that. It's very interesting that the mother definitely could be suffering from a mental illness, and 99.9% of the things that she is seeing or hearing or thinking, not like pouring the milk is a sign of mental illness, but you know what I mean? Let's say that she did hallucinate in the past, and all of those things were hallucinations. The time that she saw the shoe hop across the bed and land on the floor next to her. Or that one time she opened the fridge and there was a man in the fridge waving at her. All these things were just hallucinations, and then one time it wasn't. That would be such a struggle for everybody involved, because the mom would say, yes, I know that I hallucinate in the past, I have these mental health issues, but I'm telling you, this thing is real. I saw you in front of the closet. If Joey had said to mom, oh my God, did you just see that? I'm not saying that would have saved the mother's life. I'm not even coming close to that, because there are other mental health issues going on there. I find it interesting that this specific event, she then would have had knowledge that this event was real. I necessarily don't think it would have kept her from killing herself. I'm not thinking she only killed herself because of this, because we don't know the full health history. Joey himself says, let me read you this quote. He goes, quote, I feel that I need to mention that my mother, because of her mental illness, took her own life. I now wonder if that strange incident contributed to her demise, unquote. Obviously I'm not a doctor, and we're getting this story, years after the fact on maybe, but you can never know. You can never know. And I hope Joey, I think if I was Joey, it would be hard for me not to put a little blame on myself to say, oh, I wish I had told my mom what I had seen. Maybe she would have thought she was less crazy than she actually was. But that's just not the way that mental health issues work or suicide works. It's just not the way, it's just such a tragic story. This particular incident is interesting because this one was real. This time, the mother did see something that was unrealistic, that shouldn't be there, but there was another witness to see it as well. And to someone who suffers through mental illness for years, I don't know if that would necessarily be vindicating or even more scary. Because if you come to the realization that what you are experiencing is actually an illness and not real, and you're taking medicine for that, that might give you some control over it. But then if someone goes, oh, no, some of your delusions are real. You're not being gang stalked, but the government is tapping into your phone line because they want to figure out if you are the nobody. Like, honestly, I feel that would be worse. If some of your delusions you knew were fake, but some of them turned out to be true. Because then you'd constantly be playing this guessing game. I think if I was mentally ill, I'd rather them say, Jason, all those leprechauns you see, they're all fake. That's you hallucinating because you have brain damage. Someone tried to unalive you. And they just damaged the cotton candy in your skull. But if you see a leprechaun with blue buckles on their shoes, those are the real ones. Those are the ones that actually you got to look out for. They'll actually steal your soul. I'd be like, wait, what? I thought leprechauns weren't real. I'd rather believe that none of it was real and that it was something that was wrapped up in a delusion than, no, some of it's real, some of it's fake. It's a terrifying story. It really is a terrifying story. I think that a paranormal entity, especially something demonic, we've been talking about demons a lot this week, I think that they could definitely cause chaos in someone who's already suffering from mental illness, because they can piggyback on the already existing mental problems. Make things a lot worse. I will also say, and we'll wrap it up like this, there could also be a idea that, this might sound kind of insensitive, but I wonder if somebody can be so mentally ill that they're hallucinating. Because when I said if two people hallucinate the same thing, we know it's a real phenomenon, there's a caveat to that. Mass hallucinations, we do have those. That is a thing, but normally it involves a ton of people, like a mob. I know they have folie à deux, the madness of many. You can have two people get wrapped up in a shared delusion or a cult, right? A strong cult leader can cause other people to start to see things differently, start to hallucinate. I wonder if you could be so mentally ill or so wrapped up in something that your hallucinations can become visible to other people. You're almost creating an instant tulpa. So this could have not been paranormal at all. They could have been paranormal in the sense that Joey was seeing his mother's delusion. Which again, I would argue would be more terrifying than just the doppelganger or a spirit. To think that you can be driven mad by being around mad people, which again is what mass hysteria is. As I was prepping shows for the radio, we're going to wrap it up like this. These episodes, end of the season, always go too long. I was prepping episodes for the radio, right? I have to take these normal episodes, cut them down to either 28 minutes or 58 minutes, and remove all the poop references, which is almost every episode. Shockingly, I talk about poop. You guys are aware of that? I wasn't. I didn't realize it was that bad. I was doing this episode, I'll put it in the show notes, about there was a school in Mexico that a mass panic / mass demonic possession took place. It's a fantastic story. I had completely forgotten about it. It's re-listening to it, I go, this is actually a really strong episode. I like the story, and I like the way I presented it as well. I cut it down to 28 minutes. It'll be on the radio someday, but I'll put the podcast version in the show notes. I thought it was really interesting because there's a psychologist or a psychiatrist who comes out to the school to examine these girls, and they say Mass hysteria is actually one of the most terrifying diseases known, because there is no inoculation to it. There is no way to not become part of the mass hysteria. The only way is to not be around it. If you are near one of these events, there is no risk factors for it. You could be the smartest guy in the room. You could be a 12-year-old girl. Doesn't matter. Both people can all of a sudden believe that they're possessed by demons. That's the only way. The only way to not become part of mass hysteria is to not be near it. That's really interesting. It's kind of creepy though, right? There's no way to stop it. If you're there, the risk of you becoming crazy along with them is the same as everybody else's. There's no psychological factors. And this would make it even more terrifying. It wouldn't be the madness of many. It would be truly folie à deux, the madness of two. One person sees something, and then her son, because of this swirling emotional storm going on in the mother, she projects her hallucination out into the world, and the son is able to see it. To me, that is more terrifying than a spirit. Because again, that could affect anybody at any time. To me, going mad is scarier than having a haunted house. Or having a witch crawl out of a grave to eke its revenge out on you. Losing your mind, to me, is more terrifying than both of those, or many other paranormal events that can happen to you. But to think that you could be around somebody who has such a loose grip on reality that they can actually alter the reality of others near them takes us back to the world of the paranormal. Maybe it was a ghost, maybe it was her own mind who created this doppelganger. It could have been a host of many different paranormal phenomenon that caused two people to see the same thing. It could have been a shared hallucination. It could have been a hallucination, a tulpa created by one person that's visible to the other. Who knows? But a terrifying story all around. And depressing, definitely depressing. This was a depressing episode. The end of seasons tend to get depressing for whatever reason, probably because I'm so worn out just reading depressing stuff. But Joey and your father, I hope you guys are doing better. Suicide stories are always tough to cover. Not a lot of jokes. Not a lot of jokes. This one particularly terrifying. Can you spread your madness to others, the closest around you, the people who love you the most? It is something that I hope is not possible, but it just might be. DeadRabbitRadio@gmail.com is going to be our email address. You can also hit us up at Facebook.com/DeadRabbitRadio. TikTok is @DeadRabbitRadio. Dead Rabbit Radio is the daily paranormal conspiracy and true crime podcast. You don't have to listen to it every day, but I'm glad you listened to it today. Have a great one.